Part 1. The Broken Sanctuary. The Vora were the most feared hunters in the known galaxy. They stood 7 feet tall with thick green scales covering their bodies. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. Every species in the Coalition knew to step aside when a Vora walked past. But even the deadliest predators had children. 3 young Vora cubs wandered through the corridors of Station Keller, the massive diplomatic hub floating in neutral space. Their parents were busy in the Grand Summit Hall, arguing about trade, routes, and border disputes with representatives from 12 different species. The cubs had grown bored of sitting quietly, so they had slipped away to explore. Ren was the oldest. He was almost 5 feet tall now, and his scales had started to darken from the pale green of childhood to the deeper shade of an adult. He walked ahead of the others, trying to look serious and mature. Behind him came Kale, his younger brother. Kale was curious about everything. He stopped to examine every panel, every door, every strange marking on the walls. Their parents often joked that Kale would become a scientist instead of a warrior. Tiva was the youngest. She was small and quick, with bright golden eyes that missed nothing. She noticed things her brothers overlooked. Small things. Important things. The 3 cubs turned down Corridor 7B, a section of the station they had never visited before. The walls here were different, softer. The lighting was warmer and gentler than the harsh white lights in the Vora section. "This is the human area," Rin said, lowering his voice. "We should not be here." "Why not?" Kale asked. "Humans are part of the Coalition now. They are allies. They are prey," Rin corrected him. "Soft, weak, slow, no claws, no scales, no venom. Father says they only joined the Coalition because other species felt sorry for them." Tiva tilted her head. "If they are so weak, how did they survive long enough to reach the stars?" Rin did not have an answer for that. They kept walking until they reached a large window that looked into a habitat module. Human living spaces were strange. They had soft furniture everywhere, fabric coverings on their resting platforms, colorful objects on shelves that served no obvious purpose. But what caught Tiva's attention was the human herself. She was sitting on the floor in the middle of the room. Around her lay broken pieces of something, glass fragments, bent metal bars. A small dish cracked into 3 pieces. The human was crying. Tiva had never seen a predator species cry before. The Vora did not weep. When they lost something, they roared their grief to the sky and then buried it deep inside where no one could see. Showing pain was showing weakness. Weakness invited death. But this human sat openly in her broken room, tears running down her face, making no effort to hide her sorrow. "What is she doing?" Kale whispered. "Leaking," Rin said with disgust. Humans leak water from their eyes when they are upset. It is one of their many defects. "She is sad," Tiva said quietly. "Something bad has happened to her." They watched as the human picked up the bent metal bars with trembling hands. She tried to push them back into shape, but they would not hold. She made a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a scream, then dropped the bars and buried her face in her hands. Tiva pressed closer to the window. She could see what the broken thing had been now. A cage, a small enclosure made of wire and glass, with a water bottle attached to one side and a feeding dish at the bottom. The water bottle was shattered. The dish was cracked. The door hung open at a wrong angle. "It was a pen," Tiva said, "for keeping a small creature." "Where is the creature?" Kale asked. They all looked around the room. There was no animal inside, just a human and her broken cage. Tiva noticed something else. A small hole in the wall near the floor, a ventilation grate that had been knocked loose. And near the grate, tiny scratches in the soft floor covering. The creature escaped, Tiva realized. Something broke the cage, and the creature ran away into the station. The human seemed to reach the same conclusion. She stood up suddenly, wiping her face with her sleeve. She walked to the ventilation grate and knelt down, peering into the darkness beyond. "Bori," she called softly. "Bori, please come back." Her voice cracked on the words. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. But she kept calling, kept hoping, kept reaching into the darkness for something that was already gone. Rin shifted uncomfortably. "We should leave. This is not our concern." "Wait," Tiva said. "I want to see what she does." They watched as the human pulled out a small device and began scanning the ventilation shaft. She worked quickly, her fingers moving across the screen with practiced speed. Whatever she was doing, she was not giving up. A chime sounded from somewhere deeper in the station. An announcement in the common trade language informed everyone that the summit would resume in 1 hour. The human ignored it. She pulled a bag from under her sleeping platform and began filling it with supplies. A small container of food, a soft cloth, a light that could fit in her hand, medical supplies in a white box with a red symbol. "She's going to hunt for it," Kale said with surprise. "The escaped creature. She's going to search the entire station." "That is foolish," Rin said. "The station is massive. The creature could be anywhere. It could already be dead." "She does not care," Tiva said softly. She was watching the human's face. The tears had stopped now. Something else had replaced the sadness. Something harder. Something that reminded Tiva of her mother preparing for battle. She's going to find it anyway. The human finished packing her bag. She paused at the door and looked back at the broken cage one last time. Then she squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked out of the room. She passed right by the window where the cubs were hiding. For one terrible moment, Tiva thought the human would see them. But the woman's eyes were focused straight ahead, burning with quiet determination. She did not look like prey anymore. Tiva felt something stir in her chest. Curiosity, respect. She did not understand humans. She did not know why this soft, clawless creature cared so much about a small animal in a cage. But she wanted to find out. "Follow her," Tiva said to her brothers. "What?" Rin stared at her. "No, absolutely not. I want to see what happens," Tiva insisted. "I want to understand." Kale was already moving toward the corridor. "So do I." Rin looked between his siblings, frustrated. He was supposed to be the responsible one. He was supposed to keep them out of trouble. But even he could not deny that he was curious too. "Fine," he growled. "But if we get caught, I am blaming both of you." The three young predators slipped into the corridor and began following the human named Yuna into the depths of the station. Part 2. The hunt begins. Yuna moved through the station like water flowing through cracks in stone. She was small compared to most species on Station Keller. Her head barely reached the chest of an average Vora adult. She had no claws to defend herself, no scales to protect her soft skin. But she moved with a purpose that made the cubs forget how fragile she looked. The three young Vora followed at a safe distance. Their claws clicked softly against the metal floors, but Yuna never turned around. She was too focused on her hunt. She went to the station command center first, Kale whispered as they watched from behind a support pillar. "Look, she is talking to that official." The official was a Kellis, one of the species that managed Station Keller. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that changed color based on their mood. This one's skin was shifting between gray and pale yellow. Boredom and mild annoyance. Yuna was speaking quickly, her hands moving as she talked. The cubs could not hear the words, but they could see her face. She was pleading, asking for help. The Kellis official shook his head. His 4 hands made a gesture of dismissal. He pointed toward the summit hall, then toward the clock on the wall. His message was clear, even without words. The summit was more important. There was no time for small problems. Yuna's shoulders dropped. For a moment, she looked defeated. The cubs watched her nod politely, thank the official, and turn away. She gave up, Rin said. There was something like disappointment in his voice. No, Tiva said. Watch. As soon as Yuna was out of the official's sight, her expression changed. The sadness disappeared. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed. She pulled out her scanning device and began walking toward the maintenance section of the station. She had not given up at all. She had simply stopped asking for help. The cubs followed her down into the lower levels of the station. The corridors here were narrower and darker. The walls were lined with pipes and cables. The air smelled different, thick with the scent of machinery and recycled atmosphere. Yun stopped at access panel and began typing commands into the station's computer system. Numbers and diagrams appeared on the small screen. She studied them carefully, her finger tracing lines and pathways. She is mapping the ventilation system, Kale realized. She's trying to figure out where the creature might have gone. That will take forever, Rin said. The station's ventilation network covers every section. Thousands of pathways. The creature could be anywhere. Then, she will check everywhere, Tiva said simply. They watched as Yuna finished her calculations and picked a direction. She walked to a ventilation grate near the floor, knelt down, and peered inside. Then she did something that shocked all three cubs. She removed the grate and crawled inside. She is going into the vents, Kale said with disbelief. She is actually crawling through the maintenance tunnels. The tunnels were small. Too small for most species. A Vara could never fit. Even a Kellis would struggle. But Yuna was tiny by galactic standards. Her small size, which seemed like such a weakness, suddenly became an advantage. The cubs heard her voice echoing from inside the vent. Bori, Bori, are you in here? She was calling for her lost creature, hoping it would hear her voice and come to her. This is taking too long, Rin complained after an hour had passed. She's just crawling through tunnels and calling the same name over and over. Nothing is happening. She's being thorough, Tiva said. She is checking every possible location. She is wasting her time. Is she? Tiva pointed as Yuna emerged from another vent, covered in dust and grime. The human checked her device again, marked something on her map, and moved to the next section. Her movements were tired now. Her shoulders sagged. But she did not stop. She did not rest. She simply kept going. Kale tilted his head. I do not understand. The creature she is looking for, what is it? A hunting companion? A bonded partner? No, Rin said. I heard her talking to the Kellis official. She called it a rabbit. It is a small prey animal from her home planet. Soft fur, long ears. It eats plants. A prey animal? Kale was confused. Why would she keep a prey animal as a companion? Does she eat it? Humans do eat rabbits, Rin admitted. But this one was not for eating. She kept it in a cage. She gave it a name. Bori, Tiva remembered. She called it Bori. The cubs fell silent, trying to understand. In Vora culture, animals served purposes. Hunting beasts helped with the chase. Guard creatures protected homes and territory. Some species were kept for food. But keeping a prey animal as a companion, giving it a name, searching for it when it was lost, this made no sense. Hours passed. The station moved through its cycle from daylighting to nightlighting. The summit sessions ended and began again. Other species walked past the corridors, busy with their own concerns. No one noticed a small human crawling through vents and checking maintenance shafts. No one except three young Vora cubs who had nothing better to do than watch. Yuna checked the medical bay. She checked the food storage areas. She checked the garden sections where plants were grown for oxygen and food. She asked workers and maintenance crews if they had seen a small furry creature. Most ignored her. Some laughed. One security officer told her to stop bothering people with her trivial problems. Through it all, Una remained polite. She thanked everyone, even those who were rude to her. She apologized for taking their time. And then she continued searching. Why does no one help her? Tiva asked. She was starting to feel angry on the humans' behalf. She asked nicely. She explained the problem. Why do they not care? Because she is human, Rin said. And humans are weak. Weak species do not get respect. But she is part of the coalition, Kale argued. She is supposed to be an ally. Being an ally and being respected are different things. Tiva watched as Una sat down on a crate in the storage room, finally taking a short rest. The human pulled a water container from her bag and drank slowly. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion. There was a cut on her arm where she had scraped against a sharp edge in the vents. She had not even noticed it. She's going to keep searching, Tiva said quietly, even though no one will help. Even though she is tired and hurt. She is not going to give up. Why? Rin demanded. Why does she care so much about a stupid prey animal? Tiva thought about that question. She thought about her mother, who had lost her bond beast in a war 3 years ago. Her mother still kept a tuft of the creature's fur in her quarters. She still spoke its name sometimes when she thought no one was listening. Maybe it is not stupid to her, Tiva said. Maybe it is family. Rin made a dismissive sound, but he did not argue. They watched as Una finished her water, bandaged her cut with supplies from her bag, and stood up again. She checked her map, calculated her next destination, and started walking. The hunt continued, and 3 young predators followed, not sure why they cared, but unable to look away. Part 3. Tape and tenderness. The station's lights dimmed to signal night hours. Most species returned to their quarters to rest. The corridors grew quiet except for security. Patrols and maintenance workers. Yuna did not stop searching. The 3 cubs watched from the shadows as she checked another section of ventilation tunnels, calling softly for her lost rabbit. Her voice was hoarse now. Her movements were slow. She had been hunting for nearly 16 hours without rest. She needs to sleep, Kale said. Even he sounded tired just from watching her. Humans need more sleep than we do, Rin agreed. If she keeps going like this, she will collapse. Tiva said nothing. She was thinking about something else. Finally, near the middle of the night cycle, Una's body gave up before her spirit did. She stumbled against a wall, catching herself with one hand. She stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, fighting against exhaustion. Then she turned and walked slowly back toward her quarters. She is giving up, Rin said. No, Tiva replied. She is resting so she can continue tomorrow. There's a difference. The cubs followed at a distance as Una made her way back to quarter 7B. They watched her enter her habitat module. Through the window, they saw her collapse onto her sleeping platform without even changing her dirty clothes. Within moments, she was asleep. Tiva waited until she was sure the human would not wake up. Then she turned to her brothers. We should help her, she said. Rin stared at her. What? The cage. The broken pen for her creature. We should fix it. Why would we do that? Tiva struggled to explain the feeling in her chest. It was like an itch she could not scratch. A weight that would not go away. Because she tried so hard, she finally said. Because no one else helped her. Because it is the right thing to do. The right thing? Rin laughed, but it was not a happy sound. We are Vora. We are predators. We do not fix things. We break things and move on. Then maybe we should learn something new. The brothers looked at each other. Kale shrugged. I think she is right, he said quietly. I have been watching the human all day. She never quit. She never complained. She just kept trying. He paused. I think that deserves respect. Rin growled deep in his throat. He did not like this. Everything about it felt wrong. Helping a prey species? Sneaking into someone's quarters? Touching their belongings? But he also could not forget the look on Yuna's face when she had walked past them in the corridor. That look of determination, of refusal to surrender, even when everything was against her. That was a warrior's look. He had seen it on his mother's face, on his father's face, on the faces of the greatest Vora hunters. He had never expected to see it on a human. Fine, Rin said through gritted teeth. But we do this quickly and we never speak of it again. The three cubs crept toward the door of Yuna's habitat module. Kale was good with technology. He studied the lock for a moment, then carefully pressed a sequence of buttons on the control panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss. They stepped inside. The room was dark, except for a small light that Yuna had left on near her sleeping area. The cubs' eyes adjusted quickly. They could see everything clearly. The soft furniture, the colorful objects on shelves, the photographs on the walls showing Yuna with other humans in different places. And in the center of the room, the broken cage. Tiva approached it carefully. Up close, the damage was worse than she had thought. The metal bars were bent at ugly angles. The glass panels had shattered into dozens of pieces. The water bottle was cracked beyond repair. The feeding dish lay in 3 separate fragments. This cannot be fixed, Rin whispered. We should just leave. Wait. Tiva was searching through Yuna's belongings. She found a supply kit near the sleeping platform and opened it quietly. Inside were various human tools and materials. Bandages, cutting implements, small containers of chemicals, and a roll of something gray and sticky. What is that? Kale asked. Tiva examined it. The material was thin and flexible. When she pulled on it, it stretched slightly before tearing off in a strip. One side was sticky and clung to her scales. I think humans use this to hold things together, she said. I saw it in the cultural database. They call it tape. Rin snorted. You want to fix a broken cage with sticky strips? That is ridiculous. Do you have a better idea? He did not. Tiva began working. She wrapped the gray tape around the bent bars, trying to hold them in place. It was clumsy work. Her claws were not designed for delicate tasks. The tape stuck to her fingers and tore in the wrong places. But she kept trying. After a few minutes, Rin sighed heavily and moved to help. He held the bars steady while Tiva wrapped them. His grip was firm but gentle, supporting the damaged metal without bending it further. Kale gathered the broken glass from the floor. He was careful not to cut himself, picking up each piece and placing them in a waste container. Then he noticed something. The water bottle was destroyed. Even tape could not fix it. The creature would need water, but there was nothing to hold it. Kale looked down at his own arm. He was shedding. All young Vora shed their scales as they grew, leaving behind the old ones as new ones pushed through. It was a normal part of growing up. One of his scales was almost ready to fall off. It was large and curved like a shallow bowl. Kale gripped the scale and pulled. There was a brief flash of pain. Then the scale came free in his hand. He examined it. Yes, it could hold water. Not much, but enough for a small creature. He placed the scale bowl inside the cage where the broken water bottle had been. Tiva found a soft cloth in Yuna's supplies and lined the bottom of the cage. It would make a comfortable bed for the rabbit if Yuna ever found it. When they finished, the 3 cubs stepped back to look at their work. The cage was still obviously damaged. The tape was uneven and messy. The bars were not straight. The scale bowl looked strange and out of place. It was not a good repair job by any standard, but it was a repair job. This is foolish, Rin muttered. But Tiva noticed that he was looking at the cage with the same expression he wore after a successful hunt: pride, satisfaction. "We should go," Kale said, "before she wakes up." They slipped out of the room as quietly as they had entered. The door slid closed behind them. Kale reset the lock so no one would know it had been opened. As they walked away down the corridor, Tiva felt lighter than she had in a long time. She did not know if their repair would help. She did not know if Yuna would even find her lost rabbit. She did not know if any of this mattered, but they had tried. They had seen someone struggling alone, and they had chosen to help. Maybe that was enough. Rin walked beside her in silence. After a while, he spoke in a low voice that only his siblings could hear. "We never speak of this," he said again. "Agreed," Kale replied. Tiva just smiled. They returned to their family's quarters and pretended to sleep. But all three cubs lay awake for a long time, thinking about tape and tears, and a small human who would not give up. And somewhere in the depths of Station Keller, a frightened rabbit huddled behind a climate processor, waiting to be found. Part 4. The return. Yuna woke up 3 hours before the station's lights brightened to signal morning. Her body ached from exhaustion. Her throat was dry from hours of calling into empty tunnels. The cut on her arm throbbed with dull pain, but she did not stay in bed. She forced herself up, washed her face with cold water, and changed into clean clothes. She ate a small meal, even though she was not hungry. Her body needed fuel to continue the search. She had mapped most of the station's ventilation system yesterday. There were only a few sections left to check: the environmental control area, the waste processing section, and the climate processors in the lower decks. Yuna grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Then she stopped. Something was different about her room. She turned slowly, her tired eyes scanning every corner. The furniture was the same. The photographs were still on the walls. Her supplies were where she had left them, but the cage. Yuna walked toward it as if she was dreaming. Her hand reached out to touch the bent bars, wrapped now in uneven strips of gray tape. She looked at the bottom of the cage, lined with a soft cloth she did not remember putting there. She saw the feeding dish, still cracked but swept clean of debris, and she saw the water holder, a curved object that was definitely not part of the original cage. It was greenish and smooth, shaped like a shallow bowl. It looked almost like a large scale from a reptilian species. Someone had been in her room. Someone had tried to fix her rabbit's cage. Yuna's legs suddenly felt weak. She sat down on the floor, her back against the wall, staring at the crude repairs with tears building in her eyes. The tape was messy. The job was amateur. Any human child could have done better, but someone had tried. Someone had seen her broken cage and decided to help, even though the result was imperfect. Even though it was probably pointless. Even though they had no reason to care. Yuna thought about the 3 young Vora she had noticed following her through the station. She had spotted them early in her search, their heat signatures appearing on her scanner whenever she checked for the rabbit. At first she had been worried. Vora were predators. Their cubs were still dangerous by human standards, but they had not approached her. They had not threatened her. They had just watched, followed, observed, and apparently, when she had finally collapsed from exhaustion, they had done this. Yuna ran her fingers over the scale bowl. It was definitely from a Vora. She could see the pattern of ridges, the slight curve that matched the shape of their forearms. One of those cubs had pulled off their own scale to give her rabbit something to drink from. She did not understand. Everything she had learned about the Vora said they were fierce, proud, and dismissive of weaker species. They respected strength and power. They looked down on anything soft or vulnerable. Why would Vora cubs help a human they did not know? Why would they care about a small prey animal that meant nothing to them? Yuna wiped her eyes and stood up. She did not have answers. But she had a renewed sense of purpose. Those cubs had given her something more valuable than tape and cloth. They had given her hope that she would find Bori. She had too. The climate processors were located in Section 12, deep in the lower decks of the station. Few species went there. The area was hot and loud, filled with massive machines that regulated the temperature throughout the entire structure. Yuna checked her scanner as she walked. The ventilation tunnels in this section were narrow and complex. If Bori had made it this far, he could be hiding in any of 100 small spaces. She began the search methodically, just as she had done the day before. She checked each grate, each opening, each gap between machines. She called Bori's name softly, hoping he would recognize her voice. Hours passed. Yuna's voice grew hoarse again. Sweat dripped down her face from the heat of the processors. Her hope started to fade. Then her scanner beeped. Yuna froze. She looked at the screen. There was a small heat signature behind one of the climate processors. Something alive. Something small. She dropped to her hands and knees, ignoring the hot metal against her skin. She crawled into the narrow space between two massive machines, pushing past cables and pipes that scraped against her shoulders. And there, huddled in a tiny gap behind a processor unit, was Bori. The rabbit was trembling. His white fur was dirty and matted. His eyes were wide with fear. He had been hiding in this spot for almost 2 days, too scared to move, slowly getting weaker from lack of food and water. "Bori," Yuna whispered, her voice cracking. "Bori, it is okay. I am here. I found you." She reached out slowly, carefully. The rabbit flinched at first, but then his nose twitched. He recognized her scent. He remembered her voice. Bori hopped forward and pressed himself against Yuna's hand. Yuna pulled him close to her chest, wrapping him in the warmth of her jacket. She could feel his heart beating rapidly against her fingers. He was alive. Scared and hungry and thirsty, but alive. She stayed there in the hot, cramped space for a long time, just holding him. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were tears of relief. "I told you I would find you," she said softly. "I told you I would not give up." The journey back to her quarters was slow. Yuna kept Bori pressed against her chest so he could feel her heartbeat. She talked to him the whole way, telling him he was safe now, telling him everything would be okay. When she finally reached her habitat module and stepped inside, she saw the repaired cage waiting for her. She set Bori down gently inside it. The rabbit immediately went to the scale bowl and began drinking the water Yuna had poured into it. Then he burrowed into the soft cloth lining and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. Yuna sat on the floor next to the cage and watched him breathe. Her exhaustion crashed over her like a wave, but she did not want to sleep yet. She wanted to remember this moment, the feeling of relief, the gratitude flooding her heart. She picked up a small fragment of green scale that had fallen on the floor near the cage. It must have broken off when the cubs were making their repairs. VORRA cubs. Predator children who had never met her, who had no reason to care, who could have easily ignored her problems like everyone else on the station. They had chosen differently. Yuna closed her fingers around the scale fragment and held it tight. She did not know who those cubs were. She did not know their names or their family or why they had decided to help. But she knew she needed to thank them. And maybe, she thought, she could teach them something in return. Something about why humans loved creatures like Bori. Something about why they never gave up on the things they cared about. Something about the power of tape and tenderness and refusing to let go. Yuna finally allowed herself to lie down on her sleeping platform. Her hand still clutched the scale fragment. Her eyes stayed fixed on Bori's cage until sleep finally claimed her. Tomorrow, she would find those cubs. Tomorrow, she would show them what their kindness had meant. But tonight, She slept peacefully for the first time in days, knowing her rabbit was safe and her faith in the galaxy had been restored by the most unlikely heroes she could have imagined. Part 5. What humans do? The message arrived at the Vara family quarters during the morning meal. Dren, the father of the 3 cubs, read it with growing confusion. A formal invitation from the human representative. She requested the presence of his children in her habitat module at their earliest convenience. What did you do? Dren asked, turning to face Rin, Kale, and Tiva. The cubs sat frozen at the table. Rin's fork hung in midair. Kale suddenly found his plate very interesting. Tiva kept her face carefully blank. Nothing, Rin said. Dren's eyes narrowed. He was a veteran of 3 wars. He had faced enemies that would make most species run in terror. He knew when his children were lying. The human representative does not send formal invitations for nothing, he said quietly. What did you do? Tiva broke first. We helped her, she admitted. She lost her companion creature. We followed her while she searched for it. And when she was sleeping, we fixed the broken cage it lived in. You entered her quarters? Dren's voice dropped to a dangerous rumble. Without permission? Yes, father. You touched her belongings? Yes, father. Dren stood slowly. He was massive, even by Vora standards, his scales darkened by age and battle scars. When he spoke, his words came out like stones falling into deep water. Do you understand what you have done? Entering another species' quarters without invitation is a diplomatic incident. The Coalition could use this against our people. Our enemies could claim we are savages who cannot control our young. We were trying to help, Kale said weakly. You were trying to interfere in matters that did not concern you. Dren took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. I will escort you to the humans' quarters. You will apologize. You will accept whatever consequences she demands. And you will never do anything like this again. The walk to Corridor 7B felt endless. Dren marched ahead while the 3 cubs followed with their heads down. Other species stepped aside as they passed, sensing the anger radiating from the adult Vora. When they reached Yuna's habitat module, Dren pressed the door chime and waited. His posture was rigid. His jaw was tight. He was prepared to offer formal apologies, possibly even compensation for the breach of protocol. The door opened, and Yuna stood there with a smile. Thank you for coming, she said warmly. Please, come inside. Dren hesitated. This was not what he had expected. Where was the anger? The accusations? The demands for punishment? He stepped through the door. The cubs closed behind him. The first thing they all noticed was the cage. It sat on a table near the window, and inside it was a small white creature with long ears and soft fur. The creature was eating vegetables from a small dish, seemingly content. His name is Bori, Yuna said. I found him yesterday, thanks to your children. Dren's scales shifted with confusion. I do not understand. My children said they repaired your cage. They did not help you find the creature. No, they did not help me search, Yuna agreed. But they did something more important. She walked to the cage and pointed at the uneven tape, the cloth lining, the scale bowl that Kale had made. They gave me hope. She turned to face the cubs directly. Rin stood stiff and uncomfortable. Kale avoided her eyes. But Tiva met her gaze with curiosity. I knew you were following me, Yuna said. I tracked your heat signatures on my scanner. At first I was worried. Vora cubs are still dangerous by human standards. But you never approached. You never threatened. You just watched. We were curious, Tiva admitted. We did not understand why you cared so much about a small creature. And do you understand now? Tiva thought about it. She remembered watching Yuna crawl through ventilation tunnels. She remembered seeing the human get rejected by officials and workers. She remembered the determination in Yuna's eyes, the refusal to quit, even when everything seemed hopeless. "No," Tiva said honestly. "I still do not understand. Bori is not useful. He cannot help you hunt. He cannot protect you. He's just a small prey animal." Yuna laughed softly. It was a kind sound, not mocking. "You are right. Bori is not useful at all. He sleeps most of the day. He makes a mess of his bedding. He chews on things he should not chew on." She reached into the cage and gently stroked the rabbit's head. "But I love him anyway. Why?" The question came from Rin, surprising everyone, including himself. Yuna considered the question seriously. "Because he trusts me," she finally said. "Because he depends on me. Because every morning when I wake up, he is happy to see me. Not because I am strong or powerful or useful to him. Just because I am me." She crouched down so she was at eye level with the cubs. Her movements were slow and careful, showing respect for their space. "You fixed his cage," she continued. "You did not have to. No one asked you to. But you saw something broken, and you tried to make it whole again. Do you know what that means?" The cubs shook their heads. "It means you are kind." Yuna smiled. "Kindness is not weakness. It is strength that most people are too afraid to show." Dren shifted uncomfortably behind his children. He had come prepared to make apologies and accept punishment. He had not prepared for this. "Your children did breach my quarters without permission," Yuna said, standing to face him. "That is technically a diplomatic violation. I have every right to file a complaint." "I understand," Dren said stiffly. "Name your terms." "My terms are these." Yuna's eyes met his. "I want your children to visit me again. I want to teach them about Bori. I want them to understand why humans love things that are small and soft and helpless." Dren blinked. "That is all?" "That is all. But the violation was motivated by compassion." Yuna interrupted gently. "Your children saw someone struggling alone, and they chose to help. In human culture, that is not a violation. It is a virtue." She reached out slowly and placed her hand on Tiva's scaled head. The young Vora stood perfectly still, uncertain how to respond to the soft touch. "The Coalition thinks humans are weak," Yuna said, speaking to all of them now. "And maybe we are. We break easily. We get sick easily. We cannot fight like Vora or think like Kellis or survive like the other species. But we are very good at one thing." "What?" Tiva asked, not giving up. Yuna's voice was quiet but firm. "On anything. On anyone. We find broken things, broken places, broken people, and we try to fix them. Even when we do not have the right tools. Even when everyone says it is not worth the effort. Even when we have to use tape." She gestured at the cage with its clumsy repairs. "That tape will not hold forever. The bars are still bent. The water bowl is a scale pulled from a child's arm. It is not a perfect fix, but it works. And sometimes working is enough." Dren stood in silence for a long moment. He was a warrior. He understood strength measured in claws and fangs and battle prowess. But this small human was showing him a different kind of strength. The strength to keep trying. The strength to care. The strength to see value in things that others dismissed. Why did the Coalition admit humans? Tiva asked suddenly. "If you are so weak, why did the other species let you join?" Yuna smiled. "I have wondered that myself. But I think I know the answer now." She looked at the repaired cage, then at the cubs, then at their father. Because broken things need fixing. And humans are very good at that. She picked up the small-scale fragment she had found on her floor and held it out to Kale. "I believe this is yours." Kale took it hesitantly. The piece had come from the bowl he had made. He had not realized part of it had broken off. "Keep it," he said quietly. A reminder. Of the night, 3 foolish cubs tried to help a human. Yuna closed her fingers around the fragment and pressed it to her heart. "I will treasure it." Dren cleared his throat. "We should go. The summit resumes soon." "Of course." Yuna walked them to the door. "But please, come back anytime. Bori likes visitors. And I think your children and I have more to learn from each other." As the Vora family walked back toward their quarters, Dren remained quiet. His children walked beside him, waiting for his judgment. "Father?" Rin finally asked. "Are you angry?" Dren stopped walking. He stood still for a moment, then turned to look at his children with an expression they had never seen before. "No," he said slowly. "I am proud." "Proud?" "You saw someone in pain, and you chose to help. That is what warriors do. Not just fighting enemies, but protecting those who need protection. Even when they are different from us. Even when they are human." He placed a heavy hand on Rin's shoulder, then Kale's, then Tiva's. "You did well," he said. "All of you." 3 days later, the Vora delegation formally requested that humanity be granted full coalition membership. The other species were confused by the sudden change in position. When asked to explain, Ambassador Dren gave an answer that would become famous throughout the coalition for generations. "Because they repair what is broken," he said. "Even when it would be easier to walk away. Even when they have to use tape." And in a habitat module in Corridor 7B, a small human woman taught 3 young predators how to feed a rabbit, while a creature named Bori happily ate vegetables from a bowl made of shed Vora scale. Some bonds are forged in battle. Some are sealed with treaties and formal agreements. But the strongest bonds, Tiva was learning, were sometimes held together with nothing more than kindness, and tape.